Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Midnight Markets podcast. My name is Sofia Cruz, and we have an amazing guest today, Professor Tara Sinclair.
So great to be here.
Yes. Could you introduce yourself a little to our audience?
Sure. My name is Professor Tara Sinclair. I am the chair of the Department of Economics here at the George Washington University. And I previously worked as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Macroeconomics in the Biden administration in the Treasury. And I also was the founding chief economist of the Indeed Hiring Lab at Indeed, the job search site.
Well, that's impressive. A lot of experience, and most specifically with the job market. Yes. And well, lately, a lot of us, me specifically, I do morning podcasts where I talk about how the economy is doing before the market opens. And so lately, we've been looking at a lot of numbers, like the unemployment rate going from 4.1% to 4.3%. And people worry a lot about it. And there's also people who say we should not worry about it because it's just gradual increase. And where do you stand in this statement?
Well, I'm somewhere in between. 4.3% as a unemployment rate is still historically pretty low. And so that's reassuring about where the macroeconomic aggregates are today. At the same time, that direction of change, that increase over time, is concerning. And in particular, is that a signal that the labor market is going to continue to deteriorate? If so, then we do want to see some easing of monetary policy. But it's been moving so slowly that it may be more of a sign of relative stabilization rather than deterioration.
Yeah, deterioration would be so different from what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, well, so typically it does tend to start out kind of slow, but then really pick up speed because at first what we do tend to see is that people have a harder time finding jobs. And that's the point that we are in the economy right now, is that people who are looking for jobs are not finding them at the same pace as before. However, it's not yet the case that we're seeing really dramatic layoffs or people losing their jobs. And that's really when things take off. And so what we're trying to distinguish right now, and I think this is exactly what Chair Powell and the other members of the FOMC are discussing perhaps right at this moment, is how much of this signal from the labor market is really an early warning sign of something much worse versus just saying, hey, we've had a really good run and now things kind of naturally slow down a bit but won't necessarily tumble into into a recession.
Because that's what they're trying to avoid, a recession. Exactly. Well, I actually heard a couple of days ago, people are job hugging currently. And which is so fun, not funny, but it's
a cute name.
It's a cute name. It's a cute name to what we're currently facing, and it's just the uncertainty out there. And when I talk to people my age, some people, some friends of my age, they're like, actually, I really like what I do, and just I really want to keep on doing this, the current job they have, and I see how we're really worried about the job market currently. And if you were to say there's this huge myth about the job market currently, which myth do you think there is?
Well, so honestly, the first myth that always comes to mind when everybody is talking about the job market, particularly for young people, is around job hopping. Now, of course, now might not be the right time to job hop because there aren't as many new opportunities out there. However, at the same time, there are some. And I think people often hear, and I don't know where this advice comes from. I'd really like to go and nip that in the bud. But the advice is that, your first job, you need to stay there for at least a year or two because you don't want to be categorized as a job hopper, as if that's something bad about you. Or people will complain young people these days, they're such job hoppers. Well, young people have always been job hoppers. That's actually a really good thing for young people to do, to go try a job that they think they might be a good fit for. And if not, look for another job. When you find it, hop. And that's a really good thing to do, not just for you individually, but why would you want to stay with an employer where you don't feel like you're a good fit? That's not good for you. That's not good for the employer. That's not good for the aggregate macro economy either, because in general, when you're at a better fit, you're happier, you're more productive, and that's a win-win-win.
A win-win-win for everybody. You consume more, and it keeps on going.
Exactly.
And more specifically, the conversation with people my age, from people from 18 to 23, that's the range of people that I've spoken with. And in websites like Indeed or LinkedIn, recruiters are using AI on it. And they say, what if I use AI on my resume then? And what is your take about this? And more specifically, because you were working with Indeed and you were one of the founders of the
Indeed Hiring Lab.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Well, and so I will try not to be an Indeed commercial right now, but they did just launch a couple of new products that are called, I think the broader product is called Scout, but they have one that's for recruiters and one that's for job seekers. And my interpretation of the vision, and again, I don't work for Indeed anymore, so this is like, if I did work for Indeed, this is what I would be trying to pitch to them, is that people always complain about resumes. They're so flat. People look at them so quickly. They don't characterize who you are, all of your knowledge, skills, interests. You just can't communicate that in a piece of paper. And so if you think about that, I think someday we're going to look back at resumes and be like, oh my gosh, that is such a dystopian way to find a job. Just one piece of paper and somebody judges you and says like, oh, we'll interview this person or not. And so the new way, I think where we're going with AI, is to be able to train an AI persona to have much more of a robust representation of who you are. And you can tell it more about your hopes, your dreams, your career ambitions, but also all of your past experiences in much, much greater detail than would ever get considered in a resume. And then that persona, that bot, can go out and represent you. And yes, it might be talking to a bot on the other side too, but that way that just saves everybody time. And ideally, if done well, also removes the biases that humans often bring and tries to find better matches. And so that's just the first stage. It's not like the other bot on the other side is going to be like, you're hired, and then you're stuck with whatever job your bot picked for you, right? That's just going to get you through that resume review stage. But I think we tried for a while video resumes to try and give some more like dimension, and that didn't really work very well. I really do think AI and these sorts of personas could be quite helpful if done well. And there might be some challenges in the transition, but I'm excited about that technology.
Yes, that sounds. And is this like out there right now? Like currently,
it's evolving in that direction.
Yeah. I mean, AI, we see it evolves like from month to month to like do incredible things that one would hope. Like I didn't even know a human could do that, but that's great. And so you're right, because if you could tell like a persona like what you really want to do in your future, and it could connect you to what perhaps could be your future role, that would be amazing. And that's really interesting, because I mean, nowadays people my age are like, I really don't want to fit into the job hopper, as you were saying too, but I also want to learn a lot before I do something. And things.
Well, and I think that's another common myth that you see that kind of filters through young people's experience of the job market more generally. Just like when we're young, we only hear about a small number of types of jobs. And then here at the university, oftentimes we only hear about a small number of types of firms. And we tend to think about those really big firms as being like, oh, I want to go to McKinsey, or I want to go to Goldman, or like, you hear maybe some of those sorts of firms. But at the same time, if you really want to get a variety in your day and want to explore a lot of things, a small firm is so fantastic. So my first job out of college that I really sunk my teeth into was I was a real estate appraiser in Chicago, and I worked for a small family real estate appraisal firm. And I started at the front desk. I was doing super basic background research for reports. But because it was a small company, they started pulling me into other things. I got to do some accounting. I got to do some work in the real estate appraisal field, and eventually got training and became a real estate appraiser myself. And that was something that was possible because it was a small firm. Whereas larger firms, they have much more tracked positions. And so I think particularly for people who are like, well, I don't really know what I'm good at or what I'd like to do, maybe look at the small companies.
Yeah, they're a huge shot because, I mean, you get the exposure, like literally, oh, we do not have this department to do this, you go do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you maybe even face contractors and so many different clients, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, and it's just, it's impressive, like, you've been working since how I I don't mean to be like how young were you when you started working?
I was in my 20s out of college. So yeah, I graduated from undergrad, and then I worked for 4 years between undergrad and doing my PhD.
Your experience as a student, as a PhD, different than when you were an undergrad?
Oh, absolutely. It's a completely different experience. And so another misperception is a lot of people think, okay, grad school, it's going to be more debt. I'm going to have to pay more tuition. And that is true in some areas. But typically, if you're pursuing a PhD, it comes with a job. And so you're not just paying tuition. You're not a student anymore. Life happens while you're pursuing a PhD. You're getting a small salary. You have a job. You have an office typically. Maybe you're sharing it with other people, but that's often the case in entry-level jobs. You share an office or share a space. And so I loved being a PhD student, and I watched my classmates settle down, have families, all while pursuing their PhD. And so I think some people are turned off of pursuing a PhD because they think that it's going to make them have to wait until they're in their 30s before they can start their lives. And that's not at all true. It is an entry-level job already.
Yeah, actually, it is true. So that's like a myth that people consider sometimes. Yeah. Do you ever get to talk with any PhD students in the research lab?
Yes. So we do have a PhD program in the economics department. So I think we have about 60 students total in our PhD program. So we've got a lot of PhD students running around the building. And I typically supervise one or so a year. That's my main PhD student that I'm putting on the job market, looking for typically some kind of academic research position.
What's like the main topic the lab is researching currently?
Well, so I run, I used to. Now things have changed since this academic year, but I, for a very long time, ran our research program on forecasting. It's named after Herman Steckler, who was a colleague of mine. And so we focused on all issues around economic forecasting, with a particular specialization in evaluating how forecasts are produced and how that way that forecasts are produced affect decision making.
Oh, decision making for
any forward-looking decision. I like to focus on the Fed. So a lot of my research has looked at how forecasts have affected Fed policy decisions.
Oh, what was the specific indicators you were looking at?
Well, so I could get really deep into the weeds here. I'll try to not go completely off the rails here. But as I mentioned to you before, the Fed's got to make forward-looking monetary policy. And so they're trying to make decisions where the decision today is not going to have an impact for 6 months or a year. So they want to know what the economy is going to look like a year down the line. And so they have a large team of researchers inside the Federal Reserve Board that their main job is producing forecasts that are considered to be the staff forecasts that are then fed up to the Federal Open Market Committee members. And those staff forecasts are really a critical input to policy decision making. And I think that might even be more important than the summary of economic projections that also come from the FOMC participants themselves. But in any case, all of this information is really critical for thinking about how do we make a decision about interest rates 6, 9, 12 months, or in terms of what they're going to, how they're going to impact the economy down the line. So we have to think about what the labor market is going to look like, not what it looks like today, but what it's going to look like a year from now. And it's a really hard job. I mean, we like to think about things being very straightforward and just being like, well, the Fed should know what the labor market's going to look like a year from now. And yes, they've spent a lot of time building up models, and they've got a lot of resources they're putting at it. And I think that they are basically the best in the world at forecasting the U.S. economy. Mm-hmm. And there's still a lot of uncertainty, particularly at a time like right now.
Yeah. Because events can happen.
Exactly. All sorts of things can happen. I mean, and there's just so many policy changes. And basically, how do they produce these forecasts? They're looking at the past. So in order for us to be able to forecast the future well, the future needs to look like the past.
Which is not
That's
always.
Not really what we're thinking right now. The U.S. economy really looks to be shifting. I mean, if it weren't for all the policy changes, we'd be talking about all the AI impacts. That's shifting things around. But in addition, we also have to figure out what tariff policies are going to look like, what immigration policies are going to look like. And we don't have a clear historical comparison where we had AI and tariffs and restricted immigration all at the same time to be able to come up with any kind of analogy to help us accurately forecast the future.
Exactly. And I mean, not that I want to compare to 2020, but these are really uncertain times. And it's just, in 2020, were you still doing research?
Yes, I was, yes.
How specific, like, because everything was so different, were you looking at specific trends or indicators at that time?
Yeah, so one of the key things that macroeconomic forecasters tend to focus on is that in normal times, you only need to really track a few indicators. Everything's kind of going in the same direction, so you can just track a small number of things. And in fact, really just tracking the recent history of a particular variable. Let's say you wanted to track GDP growth. You could just look back and be like, okay, well, what was GDP growth last year? It's probably going to be similar this year. Mm-hmm. And that works in normal times. But then the minute the economy is trying to shift in some way, and of course, COVID was a huge shock to the economy, well, then you need to look at all the indicators to get a better read. And in fact, this is what we did. So I was working part-time at Indeed at the time of the pandemic. And so one of our big motivators to put out data to the public was, as we saw the labor market turning, we realized that we needed much more frequent data on what was happening in the labor market. And we needed that data in the hands of policymakers so that they could make better decisions about things like extending unemployment insurance benefits and targeting policies for helping families that were being impacted by the pandemic. Because if we waited and only got the jobs numbers once a month, they weren't going to have a good read on how fast things were changing. And so we put together what we ended up calling our Policy Partners Project, where, so it was our own PPP, if you will, where we put out data and got it in the hands of like the Federal Reserve System and also central banks around the world, because this wasn't just a U.S. shock. It was affecting everybody. And so while other people were, looking at what was going on with the virus and vaccines, we were looking at trying to provide information to support the labor market.
That's huge, because I believe they still do it till now.
Yes, they do.
Yes. And imagine if we wouldn't have had that, because they were getting the information from firsthand, Indeed, hiring platforms and all of these really not only useful, but the real place where people go and look for jobs.
Exactly. Yeah. So we were able to see much quicker how fast employers were just like shutting down their advertised jobs. And it was frankly just terrifying to watch that. I would wake up every morning and look, and I was tracking several countries. So I would look at what was happening in each country, and the last 7 days, what's happened. And it was just terrifying to just watch this free fall happening. And then we were just like, policymakers need to know about this so that they know that this is really going to affect people's lives.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you were looking at that firsthand, and I bet it must have been like, not just like shocking, but also scary, because you're thinking, oh my God, these are families behind this. Yeah. But currently you're still doing research, and what's like something you've been, like a trend you've been, I know that you might not even be, with the final product currently, but is there a specific trend you're looking at in these like last few weeks, probably? Perhaps?
Well, so rather than a trend, since you brought up like the research I've been doing, I have a new working paper that I'm really excited about that I'll just briefly mention to you, which is so it's actually using AI for macroeconomic research. And so what we've done, it's with my co-author Sophia Kaznick at Stanford, and we have AI personas for each of the FOMC members. So we're simulating the Fed with AI, and this allows us to see if we give them different information, how the FOMC decisions might change. And this is something that we could never do research on before. Like, it's very hard to do experiments in economics because, we don't have rats, we don't have atoms, it's people. And particularly in the macro economy, perhaps I could go to the FOMC members and give them a survey and say, hey, if you had known about the July employment data before your July meeting, would you have made a different decision? But it's very hard to get humans to put themselves back in that time. Whereas with AI personas, we can train them with just the information up to that moment, give them that one additional piece of information, and see how their behavior changes. And so we've been building this sandbox, and it's really fun.
That's really fun. I mean, perhaps maybe in the future you could even because the main, I feel like everybody gets affected if there are rate cuts in the short term, probably not in the long term, but this could even be a huge product for big companies, whether it's...
Yeah. I mean, definitely. So the two things that I've heard in terms of commentary on this paper, one, I want to push back on when people have said we could just replace the FOMC with the AI. And I don't think that that's the case at all. I think that this is, we've got sim FOMC members. And if we don't have the actual FOMC members, then I don't have anything to train these AI personas on. And I don't think I want to have my simulated personas from the past making policy for the future. Furthermore, I want people responsible for making decisions that affect people's lives. So that's important. But on the other hand, this idea that being able to do these sorts of experiments to figure out how the FOMC might behave in different scenarios might be very helpful for trading platforms. And I think it does introduce a new way to think about, ideally, predicting what the Fed might do in the future. It does take a lot of compute, though, so it's not necessarily something that's a cheap product that firms could do very easily for being able to do something as advanced as predicting a future outcome.
Exactly. I mean, you must be looking at a lot of different scenarios or perhaps different outcomes that the program could run.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, we did a couple trial runs, so we had to do political pressure. So we changed the amount of political pressure on our simulated FOMC members, and sure enough, we saw more dissents under political pressure than without political pressure. But then what I've been really into is just changing the information flow, because that's what I really like to think about when thinking about macroeconomic decisions is if we had that data a little bit sooner, or if we had slightly different data, would that change their decisions? And then there are other people that do tons of research following up on that and being if they had made different decisions, how would that have played out in the economy going forward? Because there is that circular relationship, because they are actually both impacting the economy as well as reacting to the economy.
Yes, they are impacting more than reacting.
Oh, I think they're reacting more than impacting.
Oh, yes, reacting more than...
Yes, but the reason they are reacting to the economy is because there's a sense that they will take policy actions that will impact the economy in the future.
I mean, these policies, we can see them firsthand, and it's just, I wish we could keep on talking, but if I know that you're short on time right now, and so if you would like for somebody in the internet to know something from you, or a specific, maybe even a little warming message about what's happening in the current situation that we're going through, perhaps not warming, but just do not fear the news type of message, or pay attention to these instead of worrying about that, what would you tell somebody my age?
Well, I mean, I think one of the challenges of this time, and the idea that human lives, they're short and they go through very specific time periods in your life. And that means that certain groups are going to pay different transition costs. And so it is true that right now we are seeing this transition towards AI use. And I think that is something that is affecting the availability of entry-level jobs. I think there's some pretty clear evidence on that at this point. And so I think really right now it's important for young people to find ways to show how they can be complementary to AI. And I think a lot of that comes through being able to show that you have creativity, you have management skills, because a lot of working with AI is very similar to managing interns or other humans. And so this is a challenging job market right now for people that are looking for jobs, particularly straight out of school. And so you've got to look out for ways to distinguish yourselves.
That's great insight, because we're young right now and we still have time, and just like, perhaps talking to people like you who have like had a lot of experience previously, and just it's amazing, because like what I'm getting is just like get the experience, stand out for what you are, what you bring, not just I can do this, but like I also can work with your team.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and developing those foundational skills that help you basically demonstrate that you know how to learn is really critical. I think that's much more important than having a very specific skill, and this is what we've learned from the coding lesson, right? We told people like, oh, learn how to code and you'll have a job for whenever. And then we realized that, actually AI can code pretty well. And so then that labor market shifts. So instead of learning some really specific thing, the people that do still have jobs in the tech space are those that know how to prompt the AI to come up with relevant code. And so it's really about that creativity, those management skills, those more foundational, being able to recognize shifts in labor market and transition yourself, that I think will position you well for the future.
Well, thank you so much. Our analysts are definitely going to appreciate that, really, because most of them are sophomores or juniors, and it's just in their transition time to know what they're going to do in the future. So thank you so much for spending this afternoon with us. And for the audience, thank you so much for being with us today. I'll see you next week with another episode of the Midnight Markets
Great.
podcast.
Thank you.